To call to order the special board meeting for the St. Lawrence County Board of Legislators, August 24th, 2020. I'd entertain a motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Akers, seconded by, okay, my glasses are fogged up, excuse me, by Mr. Sheridan. Any comments? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Rules are suspended. Roll call, please.
Reagan. Forsythe.
No, it's not there yet.
He's there.
Oh, there he is.
Here.
Lightfoot.
Here.
Sheridan.
Here.
Smithers.
Here.
Denisha.
Here.
Perkins.
Rick.
Rick Perkins,
Rick.
you're muted.
He's here.
Akers.
Here.
Fay.
Here.
Haggard.
Here.
Bianco.
Here.
Burke.
Here.
Bartlett.
Here.
Terminelli.
Here.
Curran. Yes, here. 14 present.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda
So moved.
by Mr. Sheridan, seconded by Mr. Denisha. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Burke, would you present the resolution, please?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution amending resolution number 88-2020 to authorize the chair to sign contracts with the Community Development Program, the Arc of Jefferson St. Lawrence, Volunteer Transportation Center Incorporated, and the North Country Library System to utilize funding for advertising for the 2020 census and to modify the 2020 budget for St. Lawrence County.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Fay, Mr. Perkins, and Ms. Terminelli. Any discussion?
I believe you have Jason first, Mr. Sheriff.
Mr. Fotenhauer, are you present?
Good evening, all. Yes.
Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you very much. If I could just have a couple minutes of your time to speak to this resolution, its necessity, and also just give you a quick update on where we're at with the census at this time. So the reason behind this resolution is the necessity to modify some of the not-for-profits that we are able to work with. The not-for-profit list that was distributed by the state most recently did not have one not-for-profits that was on the original resolution on April 8th. So that is one of the reasons for the need to modify this resolution. Secondly, the funding allotment has been reduced by 50%. So the original resolution had a total of $255,000, 112. We are now going to be receiving $127,000, 556 from the state. So that is a necessity to change as well. And lastly, there was some original work that we intended to hire staff on a temporary basis for. We don't have time, unfortunately, to do that now with the modified time frame. And if I can just share a screen, I think if Dylan could allow me access to share my screen, I'll just give you 2 quick slides on where we're at with the census numbers.
Okay. Dylan.
Sorry for the delay here. I can just speak to them if that's not possible.
Just a moment. Go ahead.
Go
Okay,
ahead, Jason.
great. Okay, can everyone see this image now? I've got operational timelines, original and pandemic adjusted. Does the board see that?
No.
Not yet. Nope.
Not yet, okay.
I just see Tony.
Tony, let's see. One more time.
Full screen.
There we go.
How about that? Okay, thank
There you
you.
go.
Okay, so just a quick summary of where we're at here. As you know, that the timing for the census has been somewhat modified because of COVID. And I just want to point to a few items on this slide here. This is a document that came right from the Census Bureau, from the Federal Census Bureau, that the original plan was for our final non-response follow-up to happen through the end of July. Of course, we're past that now. That was modified originally to the end of October. There's a footnote down here through 10/31. That has been readjusted to end on September 30th. So that non-response follow-up is where individuals, enumerators go out and actually talk to individuals to get those who haven't responded to the census to actually fill that out. So we're a little pressed for time. We've got a little over a month to do that. The reason that was moved back to September 30th was for this next line here, to allow for the actual data, the census data, they call it apportionment data, to be collected and finalized by December 31st, 2020. That was the original date. That's the current date. Now, one thing that this affects is redistricting data. That was originally intended for release on March 30th. That you see is a plan in development now. So we're still expecting that. We're going to expect at the end of April. Now it may be another date, might be the end of July of 2021. But that will have an impact on legislative districts. But we should still have plenty of time to do the work that we need to do to readjust the legislative districts going forward for the 2020 election. So getting into the data now, I do want to just pull out a couple of key points here. St. Lawrence County right in the middle of the screen, 54.9%. That's still quite a bit lower than where we were 10 years ago at 62. So we need to work on that. We need to get those numbers up, and we're doing that through a number of different avenues, and I'll touch on those in just a second. But I do want to pull out a couple towns here that where we really need a concerted effort. The town of Parrishville, you can see the population, quite a large population, 300 in Parrishville, down at about 42% response rate. So towns that have a high population here in this column, low response rate here is really where we're sort of targeting our outreach. Well, I'll stop sharing now. Just speak to what we're doing now. What we have this, I guess, this data issue, this lack of response issue. What are we doing? We're doing a lot of promotion, and the state is helping us out with the allotment of that 127,556. We're doing newspaper ads. You may have seen some. They've country this week. We're going to be doing a number of radio ads going forward. We've distributed a number of flyers to all the school districts for distribution to students. We've handed out flyers at food distribution events. We're putting messaging out on County Highway Department reader board signs. They are going to be in Parrishville and Hammond, the two reader board signs that we're using from Highway. We also have information going out to all the schools that have reader boards and a lot of fire departments as well. So down at Briar Hill, Briar Hill Fire Department in Morristown just heard this afternoon that they have a message up on their reader board. So we're grateful to them for their assistance. We're wrapping 3 buses and 1 van. We plan to purchase some small signs similar to what you saw that are outside the courthouse that were put up by the IDA and the chamber. mask sign. We're going to do a similar census promotion. We're also buying other giveaways, coloring books, grocery bags, that sort of thing, and also planning a direct mailing to some county residents to get the word out. So a short amount of time, but we are hopeful that we can get those numbers up to at least where they were last time, 10 years ago, or higher. With that, I'll have to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of Mr. Pfotenhauer? Ms. Haggard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed some census takers in the neighborhood in Potsdam recently during the day, and they were not seeming very successful because I was walking behind. I wasn't checking up on them. I just happened to be walking down the street behind them. Is there a possibility that they could come out later in the day or in the evening when people are home?
We can certainly check on that. Yeah, I don't know what their specific schedule is. I would anticipate that they would look to have shifts that would go out in the all day and then in the evening. But we'll check into that to see what their schedule is and recommend that if that is not something they've thought about.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Pfotenhauer.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else that wants to comment on or ask any questions regarding the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's roll call? Roll call, excuse me.
Arquette,
Yes.
Carbonelli,
Yes.
Curran. Yes. Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Smithers,
Yes.
Tanisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
You saying yes?
Akers,
Yes.
Bay,
Yes.
Hatter,
Yes.
Bianco,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
15 yes.
Resolution is carried. Is there any further business to come before the special board meeting? Seeing none, we're adjourned.
I mean, your stripes.
I think he doesn't know, but we said not those. And
Audio working? Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to bring the Finance Committee forward. Would like resolution for approval of tonight's agenda by Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Denisha. Any discussion about tonight's agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the minutes for June 29th and the July 27th by Rita Curran, seconded by Mr. Tony Arquette and Mr. Lightfoot. Any discussion about the minutes of either July 29th or July 27th? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. So for our COVID-19 update, we have Dr. Dana McGuire is going to go first, and then Dr. Williams. Dana?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And Dr. Williams is going to share the screen here. Okay. Next slide, please. Just want to give you an update of where we are for right now. We have 264 cases. We did get 3 new cases over the last week. 2 of them were over the weekend. Right now, we don't have anyone in the hospital. We have 3 active cases and 257 that have been through the isolation process. And we still are at 4 deaths since the response started. Like I always mention, these are the testing sites, so please make sure that you can pass out those phone numbers. People do have to call for an appointment first, and I believe in just some of the coming weeks, we will have the Community Health Center of the North Country. They will be coming on as a testing site as well. Next slide, please. Here is where we've been as a response since the beginning. So you can see we've just kind of finished that 5th month. I list here just how many cases we've had during each of the months, how many hospitalizations we've had, how many deaths, and then how many people we've placed into quarantine. So you can see this last month we had less cases than we did in month 4. Less hospitalizations, but quarantines are up, and I'll talk about that in a minute. That's due to the travel advisory. Next slide, please. So for this month, currently, we have had 7 cases reported with just 1 hospitalization. 2 of those individuals have had symptoms where the rest had not. So the 5 got tested due to a medical procedure, being an essential worker, or being just associated with the college, so could be a staff or a student. Next slide, please. This graph shows the cases we get on a daily basis. So you can see as compared to last month, we're back down again, and we actually had a week period where we had no cases to report. Next slide. This shows it on a weekly basis. So, this past week, we have 1 more day in the week that we do the reporting in, but so far we have had 3 cases. So that's less than 1 case per day, which you can see here on the next slide. Next slide. I've reported this as we've went. It's the same age groups that are just the highest. For this past week, the average age was about just 29. The average age for the month is 41. Next slide, please. And we have just remained the same at about 54% being females for cases. Next slide, please. This shows who we've put into isolation and into quarantine. So currently, like I've mentioned, there's 3 in the active isolation. We have 17 people in active mandatory quarantine. So those are the people who are exposed to a positive. And we have 232 people who are in precautionary. So right now we've seen just over 3,000 people through the isolation and quarantine process. Next slide. As I've mentioned on the previous weeks, each week on Tuesday, that kind of list of the states for the travel advisory gets updated. And so of those 232 people we have for the quarantine, that is due to the travel. Next slide. This shows what New York State says about St. Lawrence County. So you can see that they're kind of reporting 267, where we're at 264. I've talked about this before. There's times where the state tracker does not update, or they have cases that we transfer out of our county. And once the state tracker does track a case, it very seldomly gets updated. But if you look at our county and you check into some of the other counties, you can see that we're tracking very closely to what the state says. Some counties are much more off. You can also see here that we've tested almost 40,000 people. Just keep in mind that's not necessarily just people, because we do have many people who get tested on just a regular basis. So it could be counting people that have been tested more than once. But with this said, next slide, please. Just want to go over how we kind of register a case and how somebody gets counted. So the results after you get tested are sent both to the provider and to the local health department. And the local health department is the one where the address was provided to the lab. So at times, cases need to be transferred. So we might receive a case that's from a different county and they don't live here anymore, or they didn't update their address. So we transfer that case and vice versa. So, very often we're talking to another county. We're trying to account for the cases where the person does live kind of currently. If we have to do a transfer, it can take up to a day or two to see that kind of come through. But in the case of a college student, we would count that case in our county if that student was here for the semester. Things like this do get transferred because of the address that the student does provide. And so we are learning that most of the labs that are just doing the testing for the colleges are asking for the college address, so that will show up here. Now it is possible that a student won't be monitored here in the county, that they'll go home if they need to do the isolation. So that case just could get transferred. But most times we will count the cases here. One thing to keep in mind though is we do not wait until a case comes through our state system. We have very good kind of conversations back and forth with providers and the labs. So we start the investigation as soon as they let that person know of the positive test. And so once that person knows, they let us know, and then we start that call. And it may not come through the state system for a few hours or for just a day. And so we start it right away so that we can get people to isolation and start the quarantine process for the contacts just as well. Next slide. For the college reporting, so we will count the cases in the towns where the colleges are. And each of the colleges has a website that you can go to see the current cases. And this is, you can access this. I put the websites there. And so each college will then show what their testing is. Next slide. You may know that fitness centers and gyms can start to open now. And so we had learned last week that with this kind of opening, it is our responsibility as the local health department to do the inspections. And so we have just started to get together just the guidance. So New York State put on their phase 4 website of what's necessary. So we have done a press release, and we've been answering calls on what's necessary. So we will have to do the inspection. And we do just ask that you have done your safety plan and you have read through the guidelines, and so that you can attach that just to an email to our department so that we know that you're going to be ready for that type of inspection. So that's really the new things that we've had going on, trying to get in order just for the inspections to start. Gyms have a 2-week period from the time that they open to be inspected. So if we go to do the inspection and there's just something missing, they'll have to close down until they can make that right. Next slide. As a reminder, these are the recommendations that we're constantly just trying to remind people of. So just wear a mask to do the social distancing, wash your hands or to use hand sanitizer. Be kind of cognizant of what your symptoms are. So if you feel sick, you should stay home and try to stay just as local as you can. And I think this is where Dr. Williams will start his presentation.
Good evening. So I wanted to just start by going over that national trends. I think it's important to have this perspective. So I think when I last spoke, we were up at about 75,000 cases per day. Fortunately, there's been a positive trend with a decrease toward 45,000 cases per day. So still too many cases, but the curve seems to be heading in the right direction. As far as the trend in geographic distribution, that has not changed by too much. We still have California, Texas, and Florida with the majority of cases. We are seeing some increase in cases in the Midwest, and the Southeast has quite a few cases as well. As far as regional and then local trends, regionally, what we're looking at in terms of new cases per 100,000 on a daily basis. So you see kind of a little bit of a roller coaster with just the last week or so, a significant increase. And I believe that many of those cases are attributable to Essex County, where there was a nursing home where 26 nursing home residents and 16 staff were tested positive. But as you can see on the y-axis, we never really have gotten to be more than 3.5 new cases per 100,000 per day. And that's an important number to keep in mind as I talk about what it looks like as K through 12 starts to open. For St. Lawrence County, what you can see is, as Dana previously introduced, we've generally had a good trend this summer. We had a little bit of a bump at the end of July, but then so far August has been a favorable month for us. As far as testing, we've talked quite a bit about the different kinds of testing, and one of the focuses that I had was on the turnaround time. And this is a graph. These are just sort of estimated averages that we were looking at. So when we started in May, we were having somewhere 3 days for turnaround time. Then in June, we were looking at about 2.5 days. Then in July, which is a very challenging month, I put an average of 7 days. It was quite variable depending on which lab we used. Some labs were up to 21 days. So if your constituents were contacting you out of frustration, it was because of those tests that were returning after more than 2 weeks, up to 3 weeks in some cases. Fortunately, in August, we've seen that the average turnaround time for the send-out labs is a lot closer to 3 days. Some are coming back within 1 or 2 days. A few are coming back in 4 days, but the average seems to be about 3 days. So that's significant improvement. As far as some new methods, which we're always interested in, the governor recently announced that SUNY Upstate, working with something called Quadrant Bioscience, has New York State approval for doing pooled saliva testing. And according to their release, they're able to do 12,000 tests per day. They're reporting a high accuracy level. Because it's pooled testing, it's much less expensive. Their turnaround time seems to be in the 1 to 2 day range. It's non-invasive, so this isn't the brain biopsy nasopharyngeal sample. This is a saliva sample. So that looks very promising. The other thing is wastewater surveillance, which we talked about before. And there is now a pilot program currently in Onondaga County. But we do have some of our local research folks at Clarkson who are looking to introduce a wastewater surveillance program that may be accessible to some members of our community. So that's not available yet, but that's something that's in the works. And again, these are two different approaches that should help us as we continue to reopen. one of the big things on people's mind, I think, is what it looks like to reopen, K through 12. Big question is, can we do it safely? And it's not just for the students. We're concerned about the teachers, the staff, the parents, and the families. And what you might notice is that in the media, there's lots of articles about school districts that are quarantining large numbers of students or closing. And then there's, large state, large school districts that are deciding to be online. What I want to point out is that really the key to all this is the local disease prevalence. And Harvard Institute of Global Health actually put out what I thought was a very helpful kind of white paper about this issue. And what they did is they looked at the COVID risk level based on the case incidence, and they categorized it as red, orange, yellow, green. And what I want to point out is that for Georgia, at least in some counties, they were having on this metric over 100 daily new cases per 100,000 people. And in California, in some counties, they have more than 45. So those are areas of the country where they're very much in the red zone in terms of COVID risk level. If you look at St. Lawrence County, however, our index for daily new cases per 100,000 people is approximately 0.3. So really a dramatic difference, which puts us in the green risk level when you're looking at K through 12. The other way they represented this is they said that if you're in the red level, in the red zone, then you should really be talking about 100% online. And I think, California, that was a decision they made. It's not the decision they made in Georgia, but that anyway is what these folks from Harvard are saying. Whereas if you're in the green zone, they're actually suggesting you could do 100% in person. St. Lawrence County Schools currently, technically, we're in the green zone, but we don't know for sure where things are going to go in the next weeks and months. So there may need to be some adjustment made. Right now, most of the programs, most of the school districts are doing some online learning and some in-person learning. And again, I would suggest that very much follows the recommendations from the Harvard Global Health Institute. As far as reopening of the colleges, I just want to point out that the Board of Health is looking at the guidance from higher ed, and really our role is as consultants to provide the safest plan for the colleges to reopen. As Dana just mentioned with testing, each of the colleges has created a comprehensive testing program. And you might remember that when New York State Department of Higher Ed put out their guidelines and Department of Health put out their guidelines, they did not mandate testing. They felt that just doing questionnaires was sufficient. But our 4 colleges, in consultation with Dana and I, agreed to do comprehensive testing programs. So all of the colleges have either pre-arrival or arrival testing for their students. They also have a program of surveillance testing. So there's the initial cycle of testing, but then there's follow-up testing that's going to happen throughout the semester. And then finally, they have what I would call incident testing. So if they identify a student as being positive, in consultation with Department of Health, they're going to go ahead and test people who might have been in contact with a student or staff who is documented to be infected. So right along, there's been a tremendous amount of cooperation and discussion with Department of Health and Board of Health. They have very clear contact tracing, quarantine, and isolation plans that, again, are run by the Department of Health, but implemented locally. And then there have been quite a few modifications in campus life, travel restrictions, and a significant change in how athletics are going to occur. And then finally, they've modified their school year schedule. So all 4 colleges intend to dismiss the students at Thanksgiving, and they'll finish up their semesters online. I should point out that the websites that each of the 4 colleges have put out have very detailed explanations of what their plans are. And if people have questions, I would encourage people to go to those websites. I just want to put out there that I feel like there are certain shared goals that are worth reviewing. So I think everyone is interested in a safe and secure community. One of our goals is to continue our low prevalence. I think we're all very interested in keeping our businesses open, welcoming the college students, getting our schools restarted. And then I do want to emphasize, and Dana touched on this, that transparency and communication, I think, are critical. So I know in social media, there's questions about, what's happening at the colleges, what's happening in these different environments. Dana and her department, and certainly the Board of Health, have really promoted this idea of transparency. And so if we're aware of something that's happening in the community concerning COVID, we're going to communicate that. And all 4 colleges are also very committed to transparency. I want to just reiterate the issue with the 5 pillars. So, having a healthy community is critical. And again, I would push that these 5 pillars are the things that are going to keep us healthy. And I also want to point out that as any kind of structural pillar, if just one pillar is missing, so for instance, we had a case recently where somebody was ill, they had every single classic symptom of COVID, and they opted to go ahead and go to work. If just one pillar is missing, basically that's an opportunity for the virus. And if people go to work ill, their coworkers and their coworkers' families are the ones who get exposed to COVID. So each of these pillars is very critical. And then I want to just mention that we don't know what's next, right? So we could have a second wave. Everyone likes to talk about waves and pandemics. We could have a second wave, or we could have smooth sailing. And anyone who tells you one thing or another with certainty, I would just ask them how it is they know what's going to happen in the future. So our general strategy has been to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And I would also argue that we have the tools to deal with either outcome. So between medical care, St. Lawrence Health System and Claxon Hepburn have really built up their ability to respond to people who need diagnostics. There's an infectious disease team in the community who's done great work. We're able to treat these patients. Public health continues to be essential, and the 5 pillars in the community health response. So we don't know what's coming, but I think we're prepared. So that's my presentation if people have questions.
Anybody got any questions for Doctors McGuire or Williams? Mr. Denisha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not a question, just a comment. And this is for, actually, I guess for both Dana and Dr. Williams. I personally know 2 folks that had to travel outside of New York State due to family emergencies. They're both quarantined, and I just wanted to share that I've spoken with them, and they give our St. Lawrence County Health Department very high marks.
Thank you.
Great to hear.
Anyone else? Dr. John Burke.
Yes, please.
Question for Dr. Williams. If one of the students, one of our college students from out of the area were to test positive, would that be reported to their home county or our county or both? Do you know?
So I'm actually going to refer that to Dana, following the general principle of, questions I don't want to answer, just go to Dana.
So, like I said, the results go to the provider and to the local health department based on the address that's provided to the lab. So in talking to most colleges, with the testing that's going to occur on a surveillance, basis, when the students are here, that address is going to be in St. Lawrence County because they are spending that time here this fall. If there is any, reason that we didn't get the result, it's the student health center that is the provider. So we will know of that right when the student gets tested. So if there is a positive, just regardless of where it gets to go first, it may have to be transferred if for some reason it didn't come to us, but it does go to the student health center, who then will just give us a call and we'll start that, we'll start the case investigation right then.
Thank you.
Good, Mr. Arquette. Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I didn't hear about all of Mr. Denisha's comments, so if I'm repetitive, I apologize. But there's an old saying that says the devil's in the details. Well, for this pandemic, as far as I'm concerned, the details are in the numbers. Our numbers, and I thank Dr. McGuire, Dr. Williams, along with the collaboration with New York State, as we watch numbers that you just displayed, numbers in other states, rising and different things going on. I think that the numbers we're producing work. I hope everybody that's watching or paying attention continues to adhere to all of your advice. And I certainly, as one legislator, appreciate all that you and your staff are doing. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? I would just like to thank the public health staff and many of the county workers that are working on this. I know your staff with the tracing, Dana, that, not always are those pleasant conversations with people that you're asking them to quarantine or to give you information. So I know that your staff have been under a lot of stress and pressure and maybe some negative comments to the actual staff by those that we're trying to contact. So we do support them. We appreciate the work that they do. And Dr. Williams, the thing I was trying to articulate the last time was the medicinal signaling cells. And it was an August 13th, 2020 article in the Wall Street Journal. So, and I know they're contained in the blood vessels, and they said this is a possibility of, the title was something about crushing COVID. And that's what it was. It was about medicinal signaling cells. So,
I'll look for that article.
yeah, I can't download it to send it to you. So I think you gotta probably access your library unless you have a Wall Street digital subscription.
I'll track it down.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, take care. All right. Next up, we have our 2019 audit and our final results from Drescher and Malecki. We have Luke Malecki.
Hello, let me just get my camera.
Okay.
Hi there. Well, thank you for the introduction. If I can share my screen, I put together a very brief presentation. Should be seeing it now. As said, I am the partner on the engagement for your audit, and we've recently conducted what would be considered one of the most unique audit seasons I've ever experienced in my years of auditing, being that we had to conduct through a quarantine. So certainly there was several challenges. Fortunately, your IT department and your treasurer's office and your management and your DSS shifted to a largely paperless activities and tracking within the system recently. So we were able to gather sufficient evidence. And I think the efficiencies and the strengths of those departments that I mentioned are dictated by the fact that we are actually a little bit ahead of schedule than we were in years past. Typically, we meet at this August meeting, but we don't wrap up procedures until just prior. We actually wrapped up our audit procedures mid-July, and we're able to gain enough evidence to put our opinion together on the financial statement. So a special thank you to everyone involved with the audit within the county. I appreciate everyone's help, and I know it was a very unique year, and hopefully not like this in the future, but we shall see. I did meet with the audit committee at length prior to this presentation. The purpose of this is just to bring the full finance committee, the full board up to speed with the results of our audit, and then go through a couple of trends that we've been seeing over the past few years and where that puts us in 2020 and looking forward into 2021. First of all, the financial statements, we are hired to issue an opinion on the financial statements. They are the responsibility of the treasurer's office. We did come to the conclusion and we're able to form an unmodified opinion, which would be a clean opinion on your governmental funds, your business type activities, and your major and other funds. However, within the financial statements, there's a small component unit for the soil and water district that's not audited. So there is a little disclaimer of opinions surrounding only that item. That's consistent with the way it's been presented for the last several years, but I am required to just to kind of explain that caveat a little bit. Within the financial statements, you'll also find a report referred to as a government auditing standards report or a GAS opinion. And what the GAS opinion does is it verbalizes our requirements under Yellow Book standards, which is the government auditing standards, and that we have to test the internal controls and the series of internal controls as they relate to the financial statements. Now, if you've been with the county for a few years now, when we first came in to the county back in 2015, there were several items that we reported as reportable findings, significant deficiencies, material weaknesses. But those are items that come to our attention during our audit that may require the attention of the legislatures or even could potentially cause a material misstatement. The reason I bring up those old audits is because this year there are no findings at all. So a very clean audit as far as the internal control goes as well. We also tested single audit, which a single audit is where your federal funding comes in. So you get about $30 million of federal awards. It would be very monotonous and tedious to test every dollar coming into the county. So the federal government issued the uniform guidance, which replaces some old single audit acts, and basically puts a risk assessment on programs generating funding and so forth. So within our risk assessment analysis, we came to the conclusion that we needed to test the Workforce Investment Opportunity, the WIOA program, TANF, and foster care. Within each of those programs, we tested a series of compliance requirements, including allowable cost and eligibility and such of those things. We had no findings with any of those. The next bullet there is the first of two letters that we issued for the county. It's the auditor communications letter. That really just summarizes a lot of key communications that we have with ourselves, the audit committee and management, and then the board. So I invite you to read through on that one a little bit more in depth. We did talk at the audit committee, so in the interest of time, we'll breeze over that one. We also issue a management letter that gives certain areas of recommendation and improvement. And I mentioned earlier on the number of findings that were in audit reports in previous years that are not in this year. The management letter goes along the same lines, where it's a very trimmed down model of a management letter than what we've seen a couple of years ago. And really, the reason for that is the attentiveness of your management to put into a set of internal controls. So anytime we would find a best practices, we work with 16 other counties within the state, so we're able to share knowledge back and forth. And anytime we were able to bring that to the county administrator or the treasurer's attention, they immediately sprung into action. We're able to establish internal control. So we're able to dig down a little bit more into the details now and fine tune some of these observations. We did talk with management over a couple of minor items we'd like to see them install. But mostly we want to just kind of set the county up for a continuous, solid internal control. Right now, I think you have a pretty solid structure as indicated by our lack of findings. And sometimes we find it real easy to install these internal controls, but when it comes to the maintenance, we lose track. So I want to reinforce the importance of policies and procedures and make sure that all of those, even the lesser policies and procedures, are being addressed. The last bullet there, a Department of Transportation report. That's just a report that's required under New York State Department of Transportation. We did test that for compliance and we had no findings within that one. So a brief financial statement update. I did go again in more detail with the actual audit committee. So certainly if anyone has any comments, you can raise them as we go through or towards the end. And additionally, the last slide, and these slides will be available through both the county administrator's office and the treasurer's office. My contact information, as well as the manager on the job, Charles Trottier, his contact information is on the last slide. So if anything comes up as you're reviewing the materials when it's released, if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to our firm. We do work for the full board, and we appreciate hearing any feedback or have these productive conversations. As it relates to St. Lawrence County, I really like this chart because it shows kind of the reaction point of when the county budget started to systemically change and replenish fund balance to get in touch with the fund balance guide, which assigns 15% of unassigned fund balance should be available, 15% of annual expenditures. What the goal's been over, really, you can see quite clearly in 2015, which was the low point of your unassigned fund balance. The reaction at that point was to adjust to 2016 and make some very difficult decisions moving forward to get your fund balance to from essentially zero, was at 2.9 million. And when you consider that with your $181 million, $175, $180 million budget, that's about 2% of your annual spending. So it was really an uphill battle to have that systemic change into your budget processes. But that helped with some favorable sales tax increases over the past 5 years, help you inch closer to that 15% guidance that's recommended in your fund balance policy adopted back in 2015, 2016 era. Right now, you ended the year at $31 million total fund balance, but a lot of that's been earmarked or set aside for specific purposes. The actual portion that makes up your unassigned fund balance is 20.5 million, and that's at 12%, as I said. So just shy of that 15% guide. But if you were to ask me over the past 5 years, what year would be the best year to enter a pandemic? It's most certainly the year that you're in right now. No one ever wants to have to deal with the difficulties of 2020, but it's a lot easier making some of those decisions knowing that you have $20 million to absorb some of those one-time revenue dips or cost drivers with replacing some PPE and getting some of that equipment into the county. A much different story than where you would have been at in 2015 with 2.9 million. And as you see, as we move through the slides, we're going to break down the revenues a little bit deeper, and see there's very minimal impact to the property tax holders. There are different revenue streams that were able to support the increase in spending over the past few years. So when we look at the actual year in conclusion, the revenue, you enter the year with a plan to use zero in the budget. Again, ever since 2016 budget adopted in 15, there's been an approach to replenish the fund balance that, as we've seen over the past 5 years, has been very successful in keeping those lines steady and at the same time getting the fund balance up a little bit higher. So you ended up with $181.9 million, which is $5.6 million more than budget. So that was able to help replenish some of that fund balance further. Main reason for that really is within sales tax. You did have some extra state aid too, but most of that state aid went right into spending almost immediately. Some upticks in state aid are around more use of the public welfare programs within the economic assistance and opportunities that are supported through state and county funding, as well as civil defense equipment, tactical equipment. So your public safety line increased slightly related to state aid. On the expenditure side, we'll go through the details on a future slide shortly, but those did end up the year at 176.2 million. So right around where your budget is at $1 million. So when you plan to use about zero, a little bit higher than zero because you had some carryover from 2018, the favorable revenues matched with a little bit of savings on the expenditure side of things, flipped the script and you were able to increase fund balance by that 5.7 million to get to that stated number of 31 million total fund balance, of which 20.4 of it is available for what we would refer to as a rainy day, or in the case of 2020, a monsoon. So what we're looking at here is the revenues. As I said, revenues have increased steadily over the past 5 years, specifically from 16 to 19, and most of that is to support a growing budget. Although when we look at a slide in the future, you'll see, well, I'll actually bring it up now, but your expenditure budget actually only increased by 3.4% over the past 5 years. I have counties that I work with that they're seeing 2 or 3% increases on an annual basis. When you look at the difficult decisions that the people in the room have made to keep that spending at an extreme low, to be able to provide the stability of where you are today, to be able to absorb kind of the impacts of the pandemic. It's pretty remarkable when you look at it and compare it to some of your peers out there. But on the revenue side of the things, we did see, when you compare 19 to 2015, revenues did increase by $11 million. A bulk of that, a lion's share of that, is $6.8 million from sales tax. So I point that out only because it's going to be a little bit of a struggle moving forward. No one really knows where the economy is going to go moving forward, and nobody knows what sort of propensity to spend is going to be out there in 2020 and in 2021 and moving forward. So that could be what we refer to as a systemic change in the kind of the negative version on the budget side of things. So something certainly to be made aware of, that where you kind of were banking on that over the last few years to really help replenish your fund balance. Where are those numbers going forward? And much like the doctors have spoken on where COVID is going, if anyone tells you they know where sales tax is going, ask where they got their information from, because it's very unpredictable right now. It depends on which article you read, and you're going to get a different story forward. When you look at year to year, I did mention the first color there, the 63.5 is your sales tax, your non-property tax item. It did increase 2.7 million, so a continual increase over the past few years, a slight downtick in 2016. The next area there is your state and federal aid and your grants there. As I mentioned, those did increase slightly because of additional programs and some funding within the department, the public safety department. The gray portion is the point I really wanted to point out, is that although your total revenues and your total budget increased 3.4% over 5 years, real property tax and tax items, so that includes your pilots and that sort of items, and actually stayed zero. It was 48.8 and 48.8 in 2015 and 2019. I had to double check those numbers to verify, but those were the reported numbers. So obviously you're able to provide more to the county when you sit there and say your budget increased by 3.4% at the same level of taxpayer contribution. So well done on that one as well. Shifting to the expenditure side of things, like I said, a big telling sign of this graph is the nice level consistency, especially when you keep in mind that from 2015 to 2019, you had about $5 million of increase in general government support. Well, that's where your distribution to the local municipalities is. So that's kind of an inherent increase whenever sales tax is increasing, which is really indicative in 2015 to 2016. I just mentioned that sales tax dipped in 2015 to 2016, and since then it's been growing. So that kind of follows your general government support. So you had that kind of mandated increase on top of all the additional economic assistance and opportunity, and you still were able to manage an increase in spending of only 3.4%, which again puts you in a really good position to have a rainy day fund to handle everything that's being faced with the county right now. When we look at the actual fund balance levels, the fund balance ends the year at 11.6%. That's where I came up with that 12% earlier. What that is it's a measure of, I guess, fiscal stability with how much level of fund balance do you have to support expenditures on an annual basis. So what we do in the governmental world is we typically strive to get 2 months of spending. So that would be 16.7% of your annual budget. And the logic behind that is just to really be able to float the cash flows in the event of until tax collections start coming in. And that's a GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association recommendation to keep it at 12%. But as you can see, or to keep it at 16.7%. As you can see here, although you had some really solid years in creating that budget, that really, I don't think you can make this into, if you put a trend line, a more equidistant trend line over the last 5 years of a mixture of cost savings and increasing other areas of revenue generation, such as sales tax and state aid versus the real property tax, and still able to increase your fund balance. So I can't emphasize enough the picture of positive direction that the county has shifted into in the last 5 years, and certainly a good place to be, not the perfect place to be, but a good place to be when you're dealing with all the uncertainty of 2020 year. That's the formal presentation, very brief, but I did want to just give our outlook and our vantage point. If there's any questions of the board, I'd be happy to address them now, or as I said, my information is available on this slide, which will be available to the legislators and the treasurer's office. Thanks for your time, and anything that comes up, I'd be happy to discuss.
Do we have any questions for concerning the audit report by Mr. Luke here? We'll have to wait till the screen of the ones that are zooming in. Any questions for Luke Malecki? Okay. That's a fantastic report. Progress is being made. That's great. Thank you, Luke. Have a good evening.
Thank you all. I appreciate your time.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, Renee would like to say something, our treasurer. Go ahead, Renee.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to take a minute to thank Luke and his firm. We've started, I think, we're 4 years or 5, Luke, I'm not sure, but it was a pretty rocky start, and they've been good partners for us. I just want to thank them for all the assistance and the guidance and helping us right this ship, because you've helped a lot too.
Thank you, Renee.
You're welcome.
It's been a nice partnership for sure. We've enjoyed working with you, Luke.
It's mutual. I always like to see success stories, and you guys are right on that path. So it's nice to see those trends going favorable. And you can't emphasize either the improvements that have been made on the internal control structure. Just even I remember coming in and the bank reconciliations being delayed several months, and now it's like clockwork in the treasurer's office. So very, very job well done on both sides.
Well, you and Renee showed up at the right time, so that was great.
Pleasure to be able to be part of the solution.
Okay, thank you.
Take
Okay,
care.
I guess we're going to move on. Take care, yes. All right, next up for our resolutions for highway. The first one on 5A was tabled at the last time, and according to Mr. Chambers, are you with us, Don?
Yes, I am.
Don, would you speak, without me reading that off, would you speak to that resolution and why you'd like it tabled again?
Yes. At this point, we have not received any additional information from NIPA on a decision by the DEC in which direction they're going to go. So at this point, I'd like to continue to leave it on the table, if that's possible.
Okay, so I think we'll need a resolution to do so by Mr. Lightfoot, seconded by Mr. Denisha and Ms. Curran. Discussion on the resolution about tabling it. Mr. Arquette.
I abstain from this conversation and vote.
Okay, Ms. Terminelli also?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. So all those in favor of tabling this to another time, and I think we do not have to be specific, do we, Mr. Chambers? Just leave it on the table?
I think you can, I think you have to be specific, but another month would be fine.
Okay, so Mr. Lightfoot?
I would move that we would lay this on the table until the next finance meeting.
Okay, and the second, so you concur, Ms. Curran and Mr. Denisha? Okay, so any further discussion on tabling the resolution? Seeing none, we too have the, Kelly, you've got the two abstentions. All those in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried. Our next resolution is approving the New York State Department of Transportation supplemental agreement number 1 for final design for Browns Bridge Road over the Racket River, which is bin number 322-1560, pin number 775380. Moved by Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Perkins. Mr. Chambers.
Yes, thank you. As we move through all of our projects, the New York State DOT requires new agreements or supplementary agreements. So it's just the natural progression of the project. We are ready to go into final design and go to bid, hopefully with this approval this fall. So some of the situations that we were having with some right-of-way have been ironed out, and I'd like to thank the county attorney for assisting my staff, me and my staff, in moving that forward. So that this is to just to allow the funding to move forward and for the plans to be completed.
Okay, thank you, Don. Thank you, Mr. Button, for your work on this. Any questions concerning this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Our next resolution is modifying the 2020 budget for the Department of Highways for revenue received from the St. Lawrence County Soil and Water Conservation District for culvert replacement on County Route 49 in the town of Norfolk. Moved by Mr. Burt, seconded by Ms. Curran. Mr. Chambers.
Yes, This culvert actually has already been replaced and on County Road 49 before we did the recycling process there. This structure at this location, it was a dual pipe that would get plugged on numerous occasions over its lifespan. And so it would impede aquatic life movement as well as a water flow. So in cooperation with the Soil and Water Conservation District, they saw fit to be able to help the county fund the replacement of this structure. Instead of a multi-pipe opening, it is now a single opening structure, which will reduce its chance of plugging and causing issues for aquatic life, and also not put the infrastructure of the roadway in jeopardy by flooding.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chambers. Any questions for Don Chambers on this matter? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I think John had a question.
Oh, John Burke has a question?
Yes,
John?
I did have a question. Well, not a question, just a comment. Just to express our gratitude to the Soil and Water for funding this culvert. It's a great partnership, and again, it's a help to the county. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, John. I was going to make the same comments. So any of you that are zooming in, because you're on my peripheral vision, please feel to remind me or yell out like Nicole did. That's fine. Appreciate it. Okay, thank you. Next up is a discussion about the Yaleville Road Bridge. Mr. Chambers, did we vote? We did vote. Did we vote? Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Don.
Yes. Well, a little while ago, I sent out a message to the board where the Yaleville Bridge, which is located right on the Norfolk Norwood border over the Rocket River. This structure was built in the late 1800s. The historic structure, what's called a lenticular truss. There's only a few in existence in the state of New York that are open. On this one currently has been closed, but until recently it was open. Last Friday, due to a state DOT issuing a red flag PIA prompt interim action, required the closure of the structure. And it's basically due to deterioration on, well, you have the two main trusses. This is a big truss structure, so you drive through the structure basically. And the transverse beams that hold up, over half of them are have serious deterioration, which was and actually corrosion holes completely through. And then there's above that, it's kind of a layered approach. Above that, you have what's called sleeper, kind of a slang, but they're longitudinal beams that go along under the open steel decking, and also serious deterioration on those structures. So with the red flag and the structure being posted at 3 tons, which is the absolute minimum of the structure, we have no choice but to close the structure. So that's and again is due to a inspection by New York State DOT, which is required by federal statute.
Any questions for Mr. Chambers concerning that bridge? John, that's you, Mr. Arquette.
Thanks, Kevin. You know, we just heard from our auditor that we have $20 million of the taxpayers' money on reserve right now for a rainy day. You know, I know that we continue, and Don's doing a fantastic job for us, trying to stay ahead of our roads and bridges. You know, but I think as a group, I think at some point we need to take a serious look at the expenditure of some of these funds to repair. This is not our money. This is taxpayer money. I know in my district, I've got a bridge out right now that is jeopardizing several businesses, inconveniencing thousands and thousands of our residents every single day. And we're moving forward with a plan on that as well. But again, I think that with the announcement of continued closures, I think that as a board, we really need to take a look at the fact that this is rainy day funding in our general fund that needs to be utilized on some of this infrastructure. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Forsyth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don, how many bridges are closed in St. Lawrence County right now? Any idea?
Can I get back to you? It's in the double digit, I believe.
Okay. And do you know the traffic count of this particular bridge?
Over 200 cars a day, roughly.
So only like 200 cars a day?
Yeah, a little over 200, I believe.
Okay, so not substantial, but enough. Okay, that's all I need. How many bridge projects do we have going this year?
I was going to get right into our capital plan update. If you want me to go through that, I'll get right into the specifics. But we have actually in design and in place. I believe we have well over a dozen that are in process, wow, or that are in process or in design. But I'll go through that list.
Okay. No, that's fine. In your opinion, would we have the ability to handle one more bridge this year?
Well, you know, with our own staff, that's a different thing. Contracting, you know, we'll always do our best to provide. You know, if there's we try to accommodate.
Okay.
You know, my staff is very dedicated at getting things done, and especially if, you know, we can look at moving plans forward if we need to.
And also, you've shown your ability to leverage money with the money we have. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, Don, before you go into your project updates, we have a question by Mr. Fay.
I was going to ask the same question. How many bridges are?
Okay, Mr. Lightfoot.
Mr. Chambers, with that bridge being closed, is there an alternate route been established? And if so, what is the length of the alternate route?
We have not signed an alternate route at this point. We've strictly closed the structure. You know, there are other crossings, Hewlettville, and Spring Street, and a few others that are along there, but they're several miles in length, the detour. I haven't measured those, and apologize for not having that off the top of my head, but they're you know, they're significant in miles.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Berg.
Don, this may be premature, but I'm wondering what would that require? Would it be a complete new bridge, or it's a historic structure? So does that mean that if it were repaired, that they would be putting just new pieces in it? And ballpark cost, I don't know that you know all that, Don, but if you do, I'd appreciate you sharing it.
Yeah. Mr. Burke, the ballpark cost is a little harder for me to give you on that, but it's certainly in the multiples of millions. I've had discussions with the planning director for DOT, the regional planning director. You know, we've been discussing this structure for a number of years, but we did discuss the fact that if this location were to have a crossing, the most effective way would be to actually provide a new crossing and basically take the decking material off the existing structure, you know, fencing it off, because it is a historic structure. The amount of rehab that the structure needs probably would not be allowed by the SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office. So I believe at this, because it is a very special bridge, in fact, that it's a lenticular truss, there's very few, like as I said, very few of those that type of structure. So it is of particular interest to the historic folks. So again, the New York State, my discussions with DOT would be a new bridge on a new location, and something of that length. Just the new structure and the new roadway, I'm thinking somewhere in the 7 to 8 million, and probably another million or so to decommission. Probably somewhere, sub 10 million.
Mr. Arquette.
Per Mr. Lightfoot's question, the detour around the bridge I was referencing, which is the Depot Street Bridge, the detour is 26 miles. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to your project updates, Mr. Chambers.
Yes, thank you. As I did a few months back, I gave an update on the projects. We have made significant progress. And I'll start, if you don't mind, on our CHIPS funded large culverts. County Road 53 in Helena is in construction at this point. County Road 39 in Norfolk is completed. County Road 39 culvert in Louisville is complete at this time. County Road 47 in Knapp Station is complete. County Road 49 in Norfolk is complete. County Road 10 in Lisbon is complete. County Road 15 in the town of Canton is complete. County Road 51, we rescheduled that one to 2021, as I discussed with the board, to deal with the County Road 47 Knapp Station, which was basically an emergency closure on that. So in order to keep County Road 47 open, it was necessary to shift some projects around. As far as bridges under the CHIPS program, the Talcville Bridge in the town of Edwards is in construction and will be back open this year. The Jones Road bridges, which is two bridges in the town of Parrichville, is in design and with the hopes of construction in 2021. Halfway House and Road, a bridge in the town of Waddington, proposed to work on design and hopefully construct in 2021. Skate Creek Bridge in the town of Fine, I hope to start design on that late 2020 or early 2021. Lacombe Road Bridge in the town of Norfolk, I hope to start design on that in late 2020 or early 2021. Dutton Road Bridge in the town of Russell is probably one that we'll have to discuss whether that will become a future project or an eventual closure. Yaleville Bridge we just talked about. As far as the road projects that are CHIPS paid or are funded rather, County Road 11 in DePoyster has been paved, recycled and paved. County Road 15 in Canton has been recycled and paved. County Road 14 in Canton has been recycled and paved. County Road 10 in Lisbon has been recycled and paved. County Road 28 in Lisbon has been recycled and paved. County Road 49 in Norfolk has been recycled and should be paved soon. County Road 55 in Brazier has been recycled and should receive its paving soon. County Road 27, Clare Pierpont, has been recycled and should start paving this week. County Road 24 in the town of Fowler has been recycled and should be paved soon. County Road 25 in Russell, we were working on the paving today, and I believe that's been completed at this point. County Road 10, Rossi, has been rescheduled for 2021. County Road 20 in Herman rescheduled for 2021. And County Road 54 has been rescheduled for 2021. As the paving projects are completed with the CHIPS funding, I'm going to look to see if there's been any potential savings and try to get a couple of those that have been rescheduled for 2021 back on the docket for 2020. As far as our federal aid projects, federal state aid projects, the South Shore Bridge and Fine in the hamlet of Wanakina is in construction. Both abutments have been installed, and we are working on getting the pier. The next is the pier because it's a two-span bridge. Getting the foundation work done on the pier. County Road 17 in the town of Russell and DeKalb has 3 culverts in one project. And one of the culverts in the town of Russell has been completed. There's 2 more in the town of DeKalb, and those should be getting paved and a guide rail put up in the coming weeks. The bridge preservation project, which is 4 bridges in itself in the towns of DeKalb, Rossi, Messina, and will be completed in 2020. County Road 3 has been opened up to traffic, and the 8 has been closed, excuse me, and 46 and 17 are in process, but all looking good to have it complete by the end of 2020. Browns Bridge, we just reviewed in the town of Pierpont. We just approved a resolution to get into final design agreement with the state of New York and plan to bid late 2020 and construct in 2021. Depot Street Bridge, which was in the town of Brazier, hamlet of Helena. We're looking at doing final design, and however, that was closed just recently due to another red flag by state DOT inspection. At this point, construction funds are not in place, but I'm hopeful with the new fiscal year for the federal government starting in October, that maybe some additional discussions with New York State DOT could happen, and that one may get funded hopefully in the very near future. We have another bridge preservation project, which includes 2 bridges, one on County Road 27 in Russell, DeGrasse area, and the other is Island Branch Road in the town of Fowler. That's in design. Hope for construction in 2021 for those 2 structures. County Road 35 in the town of Potsdam, the Potsdam-Morley Road, we are in design at this point. Northumberland Road Bridge in the town of Morristown is planned to be removed and the utilities relocated for bid in late 2020. For construction in 2021, and I've got to remind you, folks, that is actually a bridge removal and opening up the bay, like I said, putting utilities under the bay in the St. Lawrence River. The other thing I might want to mention is the outpost. We were in approaching final design when the COVID shutdown basically happened. That was originally scheduled to be this 2020 project, hoping to have some discussions with the board about possibly making that a 2021 project. So that basically concludes my road, bridge, culvert report. I don't include the small culvert replacement, basically anything under 4 feet. but we did, we've done over 70 of small culvert replacements as far as with our CHIPS funding this year as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Any questions? Mr. Forsythe?
Just a comment. Don, that's amazing. Based on COVID and what you just read off, that's truly amazing. Congratulations. That's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Thank you. My office and our staff has worked diligently through this time period.
Obviously. Yeah.
I'm very, very, very pleased with the situation myself. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers, and thank your crew for sure.
I
Anyone
will.
else?
Thank you.
I think that's it for that. Okay. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Next is our Workforce Innovative and Opportunity Act, Barb Lajoie. Our first resolution is modifying the 2020 budget for the Workforce Innovation or Innovative Opportunity Act for additional funding. Moved by Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Reagan. Ms. Lajoie.
Good evening, everyone. So the additional $2,731 that we will be receiving is from the Secretary of Labor due to a decrease in funds that were planned to be set aside for program integrity and evaluation purposes, and now is being redistributed to all the workforce development boards.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Lajoie? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Our next resolution is modifying the 2020 budget for the Workforce Innovative Opportunity Act for dislocated worker and administration. Moved by Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Perkins. Go ahead, Ms. Lajoie.
Thank you. This money was recaptured from program year 2018 from Puerto Rico. It's money that was unspent and again is redistributed to all the workforce development boards. It's not a lot of money, $571, but if we can put it toward programming, then we certainly will.
Any questions for Ms. Lajoie concerning this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much. Okay, Barb, we have a 2020 summer program funding discussion.
I do. Thank you. Ruth had asked me to speak toward this. The summer program is miraculously up and running. Really kudos to the staff at the One Stop. They have done a great job. We received the funding approximately 3 weeks late. So we do have $386,000 to spend on programming. Unfortunately, the end of program the date for that does not change. So we really are under a crunch to get as much money as we can out there. And due to COVID, we haven't had as many applicants as we would have in the past. Likewise, we haven't had as many job sites that were willing to take our youth to work. So we will spend down as much as we possibly can, but I do want to let you know there is the possibility of a recapture of some of the funds that we just will run out of time to spend. What that will be, I couldn't tell you at this point. But we do have 47 participants on job sites right now from July 28th till September 4th, when a bulk of our students will be going back to school. We will have 7 that will remain with us from for the total time from July 28th until the end of program, which is projected to be September 30th. Some of those people could actually become WIOA participants, and we may be able to fund them moving on in their employment, maybe in other areas. So we have about 54 total youth, which is about half of what we usually serve for the summer program. We have 41 employees that are under the umbrella of Penske, which allowed us to lessen the county's potential for liability due to COVID. Those 41 youth are working in food pantries, schools, libraries, village offices. Some are at Lisbon Beach, wood chop shop, Some are at cemeteries, and some are working in senior housing. We also have about 13 youth that are working for the county in nutrition centers and in various highway departments, because Penske was not willing to take on the youth under their umbrella for highway departments. In order to spend down a little bit more of the money within our guidelines, we do have some summer program incentives, which certainly encourage good work habits and ethics. There are 4 $150 stipends that each participant can receive if they're successful. So there's an extra $600 that they could receive. One is for satisfactory evaluation. Another is for always wearing proper PPE, the completion of a virtual financial literacy program, and exemplary attendance. All are possible for extra stipends, which I think is great. So that's
Okay.
the summer youth program. I wondered if anybody had any questions.
No questions here. So,
Okay.
So how about the public access to the one-stop career center discussion?
Yes, that's going pretty well. I would encourage you all to like us on Facebook. We are the St. Lawrence County One Stop Career Center. That helps to spread the word. Actually, a vast majority of the youth that we got for the summer program responded to our Facebook post. So that was really advantageous, and we will continue to do that as we move into year-round programming. We are also now advertising on North Country Now for programming that's coming into place in the fall. As far as contacts, I apologize, we have contacted by phone, by email, we have in-person appointments. Our staff is willing to meet with clients as long as they have proper PPE. They're meeting in parking lots and picking up paperwork and really going above and beyond. We're also doing some Zoom meetings to keep everyone connected. And just to give you a little information about where we are currently and funding some folks, they're mostly in the healthcare field, which is a high demand occupation. So that ticks a box for us. 12 students are currently enrolled in SUNY Canton, mostly in the RN program. We have 1 at SUNY Upstate as a paramedic. We have 4 at Jeff Lewis Bosse's for the LPN program. We have 13 electrical apprenticeships that are happening in Watertown. And we have 9 enrolled in Bosse's programs for welding, CNA, phlebotomy, and EKG. We also have 16 new referrals that are pending and just haven't been through the process yet. So we're really working hard to stay in touch with the people that need the funding for this training. So.
Wonderful. Any questions for Ms. Langlois? I guess you detailed it so explicitly, nobody asked any questions. So thank you very much, Barb.
Thanks. Take care, everybody. Be well.
Okay. Okay, next up is our county attorney, Stephen Button, and the resolution is authorizing the inclusion of officers in the St. Lawrence County Fire Training Facility Incorporated as insured in the St. Lawrence County Workers' Compensation Self-Insurance Plan. Moved by Mr. Lightfoot, second by Mr. Denisha. Mr. Button.
Thank you. I hope the members that are at home tonight can actually hear me. I hope I'm projecting enough. The resolution that you have before you would authorize the inclusion of the 10 operating officers and staff who volunteer their services with the Fire Training Center Incorporated. The Fire Training Center was established for our volunteer firemen and women. The firemen and women actually train at this fire training center. And in their capacities as volunteer firemen, they are already insured under the workers' compensation plan associated with the county. But when they are acting in their roles as the officers of this organization, they are not. Those opportunities, those moments where they will not be acting in their capacities as volunteers, but instead in their capacities as officers, are few and far between. and they actually are less likely to carry with them the prospect of greater injury, such that would be compared to that of the volunteer firemen. But in their capacity as officers, they are still required to carry workers' compensation insurance. And under that premise, Dale Gardner, who is acting as the president of the Fire Training Center, actually reached out to me and asked if it was possible to be included, as they are A, already members under our plan as volunteer firemen, and B, as they provide a service to a 501c3 that is incidental to the services provided to our membership. Our outside consultant identified that it was capable to provide them services, the 10 members of this organization, through our workers' compensation plan. The resolution would authorize their inclusion starting on January 1st of 2021.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Button? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Button. Okay, so vacancy review committee, Ms. Doyle.
We have two positions that I believe Don will be joining us again here shortly to present. And then we have, that's a strict fill. And the second one will be an abolish and create from the treasurer.
Mr. Chambers, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry.
Okay, so go ahead, Don.
And I'm sorry, I didn't have that one right in front of me. Is that,
That's okay. Sign maintenance worker.
Sign maintenance worker.
oh, I'm sorry, yes. Yes, we have a vacancy in our, for a sign maintenance worker. The position was vacated due to the employee taking a position with a town highway department. And we only have 2 sign maintenance workers in our department, and they provide not only service for all the thousands of county highway signs, but we also fabricate and supply most of the signs for the other municipalities, with the exception of the state of New York. So they provide a lot of shared services, and so kind of a crucial member of our team. Not only just my department, but the other municipalities in the county.
Any questions for Mr. Chambers? Mr. Denisha?
It's actually not a question on this position, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
But I wondered if Mr. Chambers could stick around for the Highway Solid Waste Committee report.
Of course.
Thank you.
Okay. So next up is the Treasurer's Department, and it's abolishing a principal fiscal officer and create and fill an assistant accounting supervisor. Renee?
Thank you. So it's with sadness that I'm coming to you with this request, because we lost a long-term county employee and someone who's been a real asset to not only my department, but I think to the county as a member, a longstanding member of budget team. She was chief payroll clerk. She worked as a principal fiscal officer at one of the departments. So I'm feeling the pain, and today's her first day gone. But I'm here asking for an abolish and create position for this. And I'll give you a little background on the position, if you don't mind. So this position works extremely closely with the deputy treasurer, accounting supervisor, who's Deb Bridges, and myself as county treasurer. Really the 3 positions that I'm talking about are kind of the backbone of the county's financial accounting and reporting. Many departments don't have true fiscal staff, and our office works directly with those departments and all others to assist with day-to-day fiscal operations. Ruth, I think, came up with a number during vacancy. There's 16 out of 24 departments that don't have a title that's a fiscal title of that nature. So we really are leaned on, and 3 of us it's a battle. It's ongoing battle, and there's continual turnover in the county's fiscal staff and clerical staff that they do have. So these three positions are a big resource to any of the fiscal needs of the county. Some common duties of this position are bank reconciliations, reconciles audits and reviews the monthly bank reconciliations. Plus they're in charge of collecting and reviewing the quarterly off-book bank reconciliations. These are daily, monthly, quarterly duties. They review and audit approved daily departmental journal entries as part of the treasurers and deputy treasurers, as well as ours, because Deb and I enter a lot of those ourselves. They're also a member of the St. Lawrence County budget team. They do in-depth review of departmental receivables and accounts payables, and they closely work with departments to ensure they're following accounting procedures, recording and reconciling things as need be. And when you don't have fiscal staff, you really need somebody to be looking over and making sure that the departments on an individual basis are reporting and recording things as they're supposed to be. Last year we actually started providing some departmental, not just departmental level, but overall fiscal training. And we did 3 or 4 sessions in the computer lab last year, opened it up to anybody in the county who wanted some work at that. So the treasurer's office is charged with reviewing the accounting work of every county department. We're the fiscal hub of the county, and this position is essential to meet the standards of accounting and reporting required by New York State. Additionally, our staff, our work is ever evolving. We continue to implement changes to improve our fiscal operations and reporting. This position is key to our continued work in that area. It also allows us to plan for some succession planning in the treasurer's office, which is given the nature, I think, of the work that needs to be done, it's pretty easy for things to get off track and fall behind. We've had a lot of forward progress. I came to the treasurer's office as a deputy treasurer in the middle of 2015, and I kind of walked into not a really good situation for those of you that were already there. To have the turnaround and to have the report that we received tonight from our external auditors who come in, and go through things and test things. And I can't tell you how much work it is for my office to go through the audit, to not only provide them access, but to give them answers, because they do a lot of work testing us. A lot of you know that we did a lot of work on the bank reconciliations. We provided the board with a policy for that, and it's been adopted. We continue to do departmental training. We've updated our investment policy and hired liquidity management professionals. We've earned, $670,000 last year. Hired an armored car service. We moved our auction to an outside company, and we've done major improvements in our reporting. And we're also in the first phase of transitioning to online tax payments. So this position allows us to continue that forward momentum that we've got going, and to continue the improvements that are really bottom line improvements for county taxpayers as well. So, Drescher Malecki earlier talked about we had a clean audit, and I'll refresh some of you actually know what that means, but that's our 3rd clean audit in a row. And the last one that we had prior to that was in 2005. So in a clean audit with no material findings, no significant deficiencies, that's the gold standard. That's as good as you can do with an audit. This position gives us, the ammunition to continue to do that. That means we're doing what we're supposed to do, is all. So having the right level of knowledge and experience in this position will enable us to keep this momentum going forward.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Cole. Any questions for our county treasurer? Okay, Mr. Lightfoot.
No questions, just a comment. We did meet with Luke Malecki this afternoon with the Fiscal Stability Committee, and he sang the praises not only of the county administrator and the county staff, but certainly singled out the county treasurer for her cooperation with his company, with his firm in the recent audit. And I got to tell you that we owe a debt of gratitude to the county treasurer and her staff for the job that they are doing, not only adhering to the resolutions that we pass passing on duties to them, but to the duties at hand that we don't see going on a day-to-day basis, but that we know they are. And I'd like to congratulate her staff, after getting an audit like that, like you said, with no issues noted. You've done a stroke of business, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug.
Anyone else? So Renee, do you have someone in mind, or you're gonna have to advertise outside your department, or what's your strategy there?
It's a civil service position, so, and there is no established list. And since New York's not really doing civil service exams right now, there's no telling when we'll have a list. So whoever we hire will be, I think the term is provisional. They'll have to pass the test. So it's going to be a challenge. And honestly, a lot of these empty jobs, that's what we're looking at right now as people retire. There's no list. So I don't necessarily have anyone in mind, and I'm planning on advertising.
Okay.
But we'll definitely look internally. But this is a job. I had sent Dylan a slide, and I didn't ask him to put it up. But we review every transaction that goes through the financial system. Our office in one way, form, or another does that. Any journal entries that are posted, part of our internal procedures that Luke talked a lot about are, everything has to be segregation of duties. If I enter a journal entry, I can't post it to the GL. It has to be reviewed by Deb, or it used to be Stephanie. So it's this position, and vice versa. And I think we process anywhere from 300 to 400 journal entries a month. And they're pretty detailed, because journal entries are correcting things that didn't get recorded the first time, or correcting accounts payable that went wrong the other way, or trying to accrue for revenue you're supposed to get, accounts payable you're supposed to get if you're doing prepayments. It can get pretty complicated, and not all departments, have fiscal people in them. So that's part of our training, is to try to teach people to do the basic work. And then we can review it and make sure that it's actually proper accounting for it.
Okay. So for those that don't know who we're talking about Stephanie Hall. If you ever sat in on a vacancy committee, usually Stephanie was the fifth person in. Our mistake was she worked in the basement for 25 years and no window. And when we brought her upstairs, she had that window right beside. She knew there was an outside world. I think if we blacked that out, we'd still have her, I think. So it's unfortunate. We even gave her a pink slip on the day that her retirement, and that we said that we had miscalculated that she actually had another year to go, and that if she left, she was going to be fired. So that was Dylan's idea. So we gave her the pink slip.
That was Dylan's idea.
But she's gone. So, all right. Well, thank you, Renee. And really, the credit is yours for getting us all together and straightening up that mess that was over there in the Treasury Department, you and your staff. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. And I always give Deb Bridges a shout out. She has been a huge asset. And I'm so lucky that she said yes. That's how I think of it. She said yes when I asked her. So, and I'm grateful for her wonderful work, because it takes a team to do this.
Yep. She makes a good teammate. Okay, thank you. So, Ruth, you want to discuss the annual vacancy review analysis?
Sure. So you have in your packet following the vacancies tonight, you have an updated version. The first version was last year, giving you some analytics looking at percentages associated with the types of fills that the board has been making over the last 12 months. The significance of the August Finance Committee is that in 2015, in August, the Vacancy Review Committee was reinstated. So that's been our measuring point. Certainly the budget also does a good job annually of giving you the numbers January to December. However, looking at these, this year, from 2019 to 2020, we are down 32 positions in the request for consideration, whatever version they came. So that's a 19% drop over the year past, which was 168 positions. And that's 5 positions. It lowers the average by 5 to 155 over the last 5 years. So on an average, it's almost eerie how close we've gone between 155 and 165 positions, varying ever so slightly. And then this year, a number of factors impacted people leaving and coming to positions, certainly COVID among them. So then you look at what the board's done as far as their intentions to fill. And they're broken down into 4 categories, with the denied and the withdrawn or held a little bit separately. This year, there's a 20.63% increase to 80.15% over last year's 59.52%. So a much greater increase in the immediate fill for positions. Change over the average, as you've seen, is 24%. So a big year moving with fewer positions to getting those filled sooner. The drop this year in the 30 days vacant, which seems to be that middle ground, and oftentimes, depending upon when a position becomes vacant, 30 days will pass between the time the vacancy is noticed, the time the board has an opportunity to review, and the approval occurs at the following board meeting. So there's a slight decrease there, and that can be contrived 2 ways. So the interest of the board is to hold positions to appreciate savings in some instances. Certainly departments come in and make their pitch, as we call it, or their argument for why that position shouldn't fall to the 60-day or 90-day, but in fact should be filled immediately. And so you also see a decrease when you move down to the 60 days vacant to 4.41%, a drop of 12%. So in some regard, we would consider that we weren't successful in filling the goals set aside in the resolutions that the board's adopted. However, I think the autonomy that's given to the vacancy committee that then comes to the board as a recommendation, listened to the departments, understood what was happening, and that's the value of having 2 legislators rotate through the vacancy review process to understand, in some instances, it's not only important to fill it immediately, but you've also in the past created temporary positions for some overlap. Depending on the position, depending on the type of information necessary to do the position, we've certainly improved upon immediate fill. That doesn't stay in concert with the board's policy at this time. Similarly, so an increase, a 90-day vacant is at the same percentage. They both were 6 positions this year. However, that is the highest year for the 90 days vacant since the vacancy review committee was put in place. The denied reduced just slightly to 0.74%, and the held and withdrawals dropped about 3%. So overall, I think you can look at these reports and interpret a few things. One is that positions in this case over this year were filled more immediately. So perhaps in departments where the needs were higher, those positions couldn't wait 60 days. So I don't think you can look at the statistics and make an assessment based solely upon that. However, when you look at the averages, you can get a better idea over the 5 years of what those numbers look like. But what I can say is I think the positions certainly dropped significantly. People stayed in their positions longer over these 12 months. And the positions were responded to on a more immediate basis this year to the tune of 20%. So out of this report, and certainly I'll take any questions that you have, we also saw an increase by 10 of the positions that were considered for abolish and create. Now, one of the pieces of credibility that's held in the Vacancy Review Committee is the importance of departments to come forward and explain to the board when the ebbs and the flows in departments happen, which may result in a lesser need of a certain type of position. However, they may have a different need, as you just heard from Renee, for example. And in that case, it's also, in that credibility component, incumbent upon the board to listen to those, and in certain situations, allow the department to abolish a certain type of position and create another. And certainly these are all done with human resources input and civil service title consideration. The savings for this year has increased by $302,000 to $1.6 million. That does not take into account at all the fringe benefit component of health insurance. It's too difficult, it's too variable to associate with percentages taken during the budget process, but it's safe to assume if our percentage right now hovers around 50%, just shy of, those savings are appreciated as well. Finally, the recommendations associated with this annual review is confirmation or input from the board that our goals should remain the same, consideration should be given to each position individually, but that overall the policy holds for the resolutions that the board has put in place. If there's an interest in changing that, we would need to either bring a new resolution or give me direction so that I can take that back to the vacancy review committee. Also, I would request, through the COVID-19 response, the board has granted the authorization to me to make part-time hires when necessary and when the work or the need cannot be accomplished. I would request that that continue until December 31st, as I think by then we'll also have a budget to work with and we'll have a better understanding of what our long-term needs may be. Also, just as a reminder for new legislators and a refresher for those who've been here, the other recommendations that came out of last year's report was condensing the resolutions. If you recall, you used to see one resolution per position. We've gone back to the list that you see at the board meeting, which captures each position authorized at committee. Also, you've authorized 100% positions after a conversation with the county administrator, if it's merited, for those positions to go ahead and be filled. There is no impact on county cost. And lastly, that a continued practice over the last year continued forward, and that is if an individual is released during their probationary period for whatever reason, that position can be refilled without additional action by the board. Any questions?
Any questions? Mr. Berg?
Ruth, maybe I didn't catch it, but how much did we save by doing the 30, 60, 90-day wait time?
The overall savings for the year, John, is 1.6.
1.6 million?
Yes.
And that's by waiting 30, 60, 90 days to fill?
That or through the abolish and create, if a position had a different salary attached to it, all of the changes over the year would be captured in that number.
Mm-hmm. I guess just maybe a comment. I remain concerned about the wait times for critical positions, and I heard your report that is modified depending on the need, but again, my feeling is that the items that we've budgeted are needed items, and my belief is that the shorter the time span between vacancy and fill should be monitored, as well as the savings that we realize from that. Again, if the positions are needed and the duties to serve the public are needed, I guess I'm wondering why we would have the lapse in time for filling the positions. Just a comment.
Well, as you can see, if you look at the chart, between immediate fill and 30 days vacant would be about 87%. So I think in time for a department head to advertise or maybe move something up or refill that position, that's not too bad. I do know that if you look across the chart there, John, we were 30% in 2016 and 2017. So there was a significant delay in immediate hires back then. So we've gone from the 30% to 80% as far as immediate fill. So I think we have acted, particularly I think with the child protective individuals that we hired. Those are all immediate fill. Okay, our next up is, our next resolution is from the county administrator's report, is establishing a standard workday for New York State retirement system reporting purposes. Moved by Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Forsythe. Discussion. Nicole, do you have anything to say?
No, other than what a lengthy process this was. Just a little explanation on this. So when we had our original orientation, being that I'm a teacher and I already am in the New York State retirement, when I filled out my retirement paperwork, I said that I was already in the retirement system. I kept track of meeting times for the course of the time. And then when I got my packet in the mail, it said that I was in the tier 6 retirement. So Kelly tried to help me work with New York State to explain to them that no, I'm already in tier 4. We found out that we weren't allowed to merge those together. And I was forced, because I had signed that paper at orientation, to complete the record of activities. So luckily I keep good records, and I had time stamps because the memo came right at the beginning of the year. And of course, going into March, we stopped having this face-to-face meetings and a lot of our committee meetings that we attend that would fall under that record of activities. So I had accurate records of meetings and was able to put that in. Unfortunately, no records of meetings with constituents, but so we have that in there, and now I'm in 2 retirement systems.
That's great. Okay, just for the record, this was supported by 2 Republicans, so we'll move on. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Nicole, are you abstaining, Nicole, or should she abstain or not?
No one ever has.
No one ever has. I would vote for yourself also. So I'll do this again so Kelly can catch this. All those in favor of the resolution. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay.
And that resolution, once adopted by the board, will be posted for 30 days in keeping with retirement system. I just have a few other items, Mr. Chair, as well. I wanted to provide you with an update on COVID-19 with the enforcement complaints that we received through the New York On Pause complaint line. There are 659 as of an hour ago. We received 9 over the weekend. I think I've been keeping you abreast of the numbers. We have whittled down. This is a slight increase over, I think, 5 the weekend before that we've seen in terms of social distancing, in terms of mask wearing, things of that nature. Any that we have maintained our approach, which was after 3 complaints, we send a letter, and after 5, we take action and have a visit, an education, raising awareness type visit made to those folks. We have to date sent out 29 letters to individuals. That does not represent solely 29 complaints. If you recall, in the case of Walmart, for example, there were over 50. But we did make communication, which resulted in Walmart's corporate counsel speaking with the St. Lawrence County attorney. So I think there's been a number of communications and changes as a result of some of these complaints that have helped with compliance and folks' mobility around with these precautions in place. We do have concerns from an enforcement perspective related to these gym inspections that will be coming up. We are fortunate to have our public health department, who is not a full service health department, be required to make these inspections. So as Dana spoke to and released over the weekend, the guidance has been released. There are forms available to be provided to public health, but it's going to be a process, a new area of required service that we'll be making and working through, certainly with other counties in the region, to make best practices and to do the very best that we can. But we also anticipate challenges as schools begin to reopen with complaints associated with that. So we'll both be reviewing this week how the enforcement should happen when we get complaints about gyms. Certainly we aren't inspectors of any kind. Also, as the schools begin their reopening processes and we receive complaints, what the best practice will be to deal with the schools and what we recommend with that. So I'll keep you posted. But it certainly will be challenging in a different way. As we increase our mobility, we certainly will see, I think, an increase in complaints, and we'll do our best to respond. The county government side of things, we are finalizing our self-assessment tool and the policy supporting it. We hope to review that. I'll be reviewing that with the union president, looking to make a September 1st rollout of that for our employees so that they can make those self-assessments and do the reporting each day as they come into the office. The districts finalized their plans and shared those out with the public, parents, and guardians last week. And so we now are assessing the impact that's going to have on our workforce and what we may recommend the board take action or consider action associated with that. I did want you to know the meeting schedule. In the next 2 weeks, we won't see each other in a formal meeting setting. Next week, there is no meeting, and the following Monday is Labor Day. The September board meeting will be the 14th, which will mean Vacancy Review Committee will be held on the 15th, Operations and Services held on the 21st, and then Finance the 28th. And just as a reminder, we have a request to have the Emerald Ash Borer Task Force attend the Operations Committee meeting. And then we'll also entertain the Fort Law presentation folks to come to finance on the 28th. So we'll provide them with guidance and certainly we'll make Zoom available for their attendance. Wanted to mention to you that Commissioner Cindy Ackerman began with us last Monday. She is very busy getting up to speed and will be present for our budget review on Thursday with the Department of Social Services. By way of DSS Legal, we have one promotion in the last time since I reported to a senior attorney. We also have applications that have been received. I believe there'll be interviews conducted this week for the two remaining attorney positions to hopefully be up to full staff again within the next 4 to 6 weeks, depending on departures. Budget update for 2020 projections and 2021. Reviews continue this week. We'll take care of the treasurer's review tomorrow as well as the county administrator. And then we'll move on to partner agencies and move on through until Thursday when we'll wrap up departments. We've reviewed 18 so far. And as we've been talking about the official notice associated with COVID-19 reductions, we've certainly heard on the CHIPS front that we're seeing a reduction in the highway department. Community services, while they received notice of a 20% reduction, it actually ended up being a 31% reduction that they now have been told will be restored 11%. So you can imagine trying to chase the revenue trails associated with these funding sources, and none are being told they're cuts. They're being told they're withholds this time. So we'll keep you posted with those. This certainly makes coming up with a 2021 budget even more challenging. And today, DSS received notice of a withhold of up to 20% as well. So we'll begin looking in granular detail this week of what that impact might be. Our timetable associated with DSS payments, though, has been in the neighborhood of 4 months. And at last look, we were at about 12 million behind in payments owed. That's not well beyond what you're used to seeing. If you remember the cash flow reporting that used to be provided, it would hover between 11 and 14. So those are the numbers we're looking at now. I did mention to you, a couple of you that I spoke with, that I would like, certainly in light of the audit report provided to you tonight and the unknown budget process that we're walking into, I'd like to share with you the budget messages provided for the last 5 years by me as county administrator and then my predecessor. They're about a 3 or 4 page read for especially new legislators to take a look at where we've come from, to take a look at over those last 10 years what the county has done. It speaks to specific programs, and it gives you a little bit of background as we prepare to go into budget. So what I thought I would do is load those onto Google Drive and just mention when they're up, and you can take a look at those over the next few weeks. I mentioned to you at the August board meeting that we'd like to schedule a 6-month update on the Smart Path project that's well underway at this point. And we're looking at September 1st at 10 a.m. And I believe that Joe, Legislator Denisha, and Chair Akers, Chairman Lightfoot, attended at the meeting in February. But I certainly want to extend anyone who would like to attend, as well as potentially having a tour to follow. So if you'd be interested in that, I believe they're going to try and tour this Canton area where some of the work is currently being done. Any questions?
I don't see any.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Lightfoot.
I'd like to ask you about the social services attorneys.
Sure.
You said that we've got a couple of applicants.
I believe that's true,
Okay.
to be interviewed.
So we were due a report here a couple of months ago, a 90-day report that I'm still waiting for. I'm sure everybody else is too. We don't have it. How do we know that 2 attorneys are going to be sufficient to do the job? How do we know, well, we won't know and we don't know what parameters were set, I don't know anyway, what parameters were set governing that 90-day report. Well, anyway, we don't have it. We don't know if 2 attorneys are going to be enough. We don't know how many attorneys it's going to take. We don't know about the caseload and where that is and what numbers there are. And I expected that when we got that report, we might see some of that information. I don't see that, at least from what I'm told, that That report is going to be forthcoming anytime soon. I would like to see the county administrator cause an analysis to be made of what the parameters of that report were and report to this board how that is coming, what the structure of it is, what the recommendations are, so that going forward, we're not putting patches on something, that we're fixing whatever the problems are. And I think we need to know that before we go any further, as far as attorneys. If we need attorneys over there, we need attorneys over there. Let's take a look at how many we need, what the problems are. That should have been in the report also. And let's address those things before they get bigger than we want them to be. So I would ask you to do that if you would.
I can do that. I will follow up on the report that was mentioned to be provided, and also work on that analysis. Would services be sufficient to bring that to?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Berg? You're
If I
muted,
could
John.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. What report was that? Maybe I missed something, but I'm just wondering what was the report that we were supposed to have, and who was supposed to provide that? I agree with what Joe said. I mean, I think we all need to know the manpower that's needed to adequately do the job. But I guess I'm drawing a blank when it comes to the report.
Much like I think Legislator Berg, a report was provided earlier on in the year, you may recall, that was reviewed. I believe when the position was created over there and filled by the General Counsel, Mr. Haggard indicated he would prepare a review and provide that to us.
Oh, and that was a 90-day report, was it?
Yes.
And was that to be a written report, because or was it to be a verbal? Because I think my assumption is he's had probably numerous phone calls or conversations with you, Ruth, and maybe you too, Joe. I don't know.
I was expecting a written report, but I'll follow up. It may be, I know that there was also some help over there working on it. I just haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
I'll follow up though, for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
And John, I've had no conversation with Mr. Haggard.
You haven't? Okay. Okay.
When was the report? When was the 90-day report due?
Probably around the time the courts picked back up, I would think.
Which was?
June.
In June it was due? Okay. Any other questions for our county administrator? Okay, let's move on to committee reports. First up, Mr. Denisha with Cornell Cooperative Extension.
Mr. Chairman, Cornell Cooperative Extension Executive Board met on Tuesday, July 28th at 5 p.m. And it was we actually held our board meeting much like we're holding our legislative meetings. We had some board members that chose to attend, and some that attended via Zoom. Okay. Worked out well. We talked about the USDA food box distribution program, specifically the one that we had at the farm and the one that was in Belmore. Ag and Markets, they funded a PB distribution program, and there were 800 gallons of hand sanitizer and 3,000 masks that were distributed by Cooperative Extension. That's a lot.
That's a lot of stuff.
That's a lot. But it's, again, that just shows the enormous values of Cooperative Extension. And again, we talked about potential finances for this upcoming year. Much like the county, we really don't know what's going to happen, but financially we're in pretty good shape.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Denisha. Next up, Ms. Curran for Fish and Wildlife Management Board.
We still have, sorry, we still have not had a meeting, and there's not one scheduled at this time.
Okay, thank you. Fisheries Advisory Board, Ms. Terminelli.
We have not had a meeting either, but Mr. Chairman, if I may, could I just offer just a little brief update for EMC, just because it's about our meeting that will be our services meeting, that the Emerald Ash Borer report will come September 21st.
Okay, so
May I
go
just
ahead.
speak briefly about that?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. So this afternoon, I've been speaking with our forester, Aaron Berger, about his presentation that he'll be making with John Tenbush as part of the Emerald Ash Borer Task Force to us on September 21st, and trying to condense all the information that he has into a timely presentation has proved to be a challenge. So he has provided me via email today, and I will forward on to Ruth, and hopefully they can be uploaded into Google Drive, several different documents that outline some of the Emerald Ash Borer issues, as well as inventorying that's been done. Also the copy of the forestry plan and the forest report that we received a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, but just so that all those documents, and if you could preview them and come to the meeting with any questions, he said that would really make it the most beneficial. So I will forward those on to Ruth, and she can let us know when they're uploaded into the Google Drive. Does that work?
Yep, sounds like it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Governor Fair Board, I think it's Mr. Smithers, you have a report?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, thank you. Highway and Solid Waste Committee, Mr. Denisha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm not sure if this is, I'm no longer the chair of the Highway Committee. I don't believe I am. We have not met as a committee. But one thing I wanted to cover, I know Mr. Chambers is back on, and it deals directly with highway and solid waste. Mr. Perkins, I believe, brought up a question in regards to some work that was done on a trailer, and what it was anchoring points for securing waste containers. You know, as the conversation went on, it piqued my interest, and I've since had conversations with Mr. Chambers in regards to you know, the procedures that were used, you know, you know, the design alterations or modifications approved and documented by the trailer manufacturer. There was a weldment procedure. The materials approved by a qualified person. Was a welder performed the work qualified for the figure. And finally, do we have written documentation? And this is, you know, it's not a question regarding the quality of the work that was performed, but more safety and potential.
Okay.
So Mr. Perkins might.
So who would like, Mr. Chambers, you or Rick, do you want to comment? Who wants to go first?
I guess I can just, I'd like to ask Mr. Chambers if he could go through the timeline of this trailer, the multi-use trailer, and what the purpose of the alterations were, and then the safety concerns that had come up, and if they had been rectified.
Well, number one, I guess I'm trying to figure out the question and the safety. What is it specifically regarding?
Well, the safety was the tie down mechanisms.
Right.
The way they were being tied down, it wasn't in a safe manner. The way that the anchor points had been welded on in the positioning.
Right.
That's where the concerns came up.
Okay, I'm sorry, because I thought the original question was to the customization of the trailer. So I'm sorry, I guess I misunderstood the questioning, but certainly.
I guess the customization of the trailer also comes into play with this.
Right. Well, if I came to the customization, because I thought that's where our the questions truly lied more in the customization of the trailer, and actually just prior to the meeting, I did hear back from the supplier, in which they've been in business since 1949, and they do custom work as well. And they did respond to the 3 questions. And if I could, I'll take right directly from the letter, and I can make the letter available to the board, certainly. And the question was, were the design alterations approved and documented by the trailer manufacturer? And the answer from our supplier and fabric and customization shop is no, it was not needed, since we did not change the GVW, gross vehicle weight rating, or the GAWR, gross axle weight rating of the trailer or the axles. But we did customize the tongue to meet our needs. And on that, the question was the weldment procedure and materials approved by a qualified person? The answer by our supplier was yes, in accordance with state, federal, and DOT regulations. Question 3 was the welder who performed the work qualified in the approved procedure? And their answer was yes to that. So they did respond this afternoon right before this meeting. And like I said, I will share that, and that is signed by, on their letterhead and signed by their agent. As far as the hold down areas, that was, we met with, my shop staff did meet with solid waste folks, and they wanted the tie down locations moved. I utilized our in-house staff, New York State certified welder. Basically, his certifications are, basically used for either fabrication of equipment or in bridge construction. So he does hold New York State certification. And the individual the fabricator that worked on this had over 30 years of experience in fabrication. He is our fabricator in the shop with, like I said, 30 plus years of experience and New York State certified. The complaint has come back now that we relocated those and followed the procedures. The locations that the employees wanted it moved to was not quite as advantageous as they thought, and we will be making the modification to that tie down point again with a New York State certified welder and under the review of a professional engineer in my shop. That's my plan to move forward to address this situation. But this trailer will meet all DOT regulations, and as I said, we will use a New York State certified welder and under the direction of a professional engineer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chambers.
I hope I answered your questions.
Yes, mostly, I guess, because it's a multi-use trailer that you turned it into, correct? And you're putting roll-off containers on it, and that's where the tie-down issues were, the safety issues that were complained about. Right. That's where the concerns were, and if we can just get that taken care of.
Right, we have ordered actually some rollers to make sure that we don't have an area where the straps would get abraded. So we've worked with my shop and with, like I said, my welder in the shop. We're going to rectify that situation so there's no chafing of the tie-down straps or anything associated with that. And we will follow, the steel construction manual and, use a certified, New York State certified welder. And we have our own inspection shop where we can do DOT inspections. So we're not going to put anything on the road that won't meet DOT guidelines. I assure you that. I take our safety of our equipment and the public and our workers very seriously, and we'll make sure that's addressed.
I appreciate it, Mr. Chambers. I do believe you put the safety ahead of it all, and I appreciate you taking a look at this.
Most certainly, anytime. I'm glad to answer that. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chambers.
Thank you.
Next up is Industrial Development Agency, Mr. Reagan.
The IDA recently completed contacting about 500 businesses in the county to check in with them to see how things were going in terms of, many of them used the PPP program and some of the other programs, and were offering their assistance and technical assistance and financial assistance where necessary. Two pieces of good news. They were recently awarded from the Northern Board Commission a $500,000 grant for the Newell Building in Ogdensburg to repair a section of roof that desperately needed repair. And they also were awarded a $50,000 grant by USDA to help provide assistance to 12 men and women in St. Lawrence County to help them get their commercial driver's licenses from City Canton. Many of you are aware our trucking industry has a desperate need for people with a commercial driver's license, and we have a huge shortage, and this will be a great way to help local people get those jobs. So we're very pleased with that.
So that was a rural business development grant obtained by Congresswoman Stefanik.
Yes.
That's great, because there is a shortage of drivers. Thank you. Recreation and Trails Advisory Board, Mr. Arquette.
Thanks, Kevin. The Trails Advisory Board has not met since our ride and meet a little over a month ago, but I have every indication that the trails are being highly utilized. All of the different communities surrounding the multi-use trail are experiencing a lot of activities with the ATVs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arquette. Next up is our St. Lawrence River Valley Redevelopment Agency, Mr. Forsythe.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the RVRDA has not met. We haven't met in a couple months now, so I know those grants are going to be coming up for discussion, but probably not till next month.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Forsythe. St. Lawrence County Chamber of Commerce, Mrs. Haggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have met. We met on August 13th. Needless to say, they've been facing many challenges at the chamber with COVID. I do have one thing that's kind of exciting and I thought very creative to announce. Normally there's a craft food and wine show at Cheel or Maxie, depending on the year. And it's going to be held this year as an open air market at the lovely Power and Equipment Museum in beautiful Madrid, New York. That's going to be on September 26th from 10 to 6. And all the information is on the chamber website, $10 per car. Face masks and social distancing will be required. But I thought that was a very creative way for the chamber to come up with, not missing out on that very successful thing they have. Just to back up what Tony reported, they are also seeing a lot of activity on their website for use of the trails. I think people have found that hiking and being outdoors has been a great alternative to things being closed and having no place to go. So that's the report. Our next meeting will be on October 8th, followed by a meeting on December 10th.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Haggard. Soil and Water Conservation District Board Directors, Mr. Berg.
We met on August 20th, last Thursday. There was a discussion about about the solar projects, brief discussion about the solar projects and the ongoing concern that the solar developers not use prime agricultural land. There's plenty of scrap land to use. And our state representative, Ryan Cunningham, for Soil and Water, indicated that the grant timelines have been extended, and that some of the grants have been returned because the cost of construction material has taken such a dramatic increase that the individuals who receive the grants simply don't have enough money to fulfill them. So whether they reapply for a larger amount to cover the increased costs, or whether they just let go is an unknown at the present time. All of the building itself that houses Soil and Water and is also shared by other entities is in a phase 1 reopening, which means they can still only have 2 of the Soil and Water staff physically present in the office. And the office is being staffed, and the other employees are working remotely. All of the state performance measures have been met, and in spite of the COVID, they're achieving all of their desired outcomes. And they are also, just as an aside, they're going to be purchasing a half-ton pickup truck to replace one that's aging. And I don't know, Kevin, if you have anything else.
Well, we did have a discussion about the Emerald Ash Borer. We knew about the request. We couldn't remember the legislator that requested it. We narrowed it down to you, Nicole. And what they did comment was that essentially no new information would be relevant other than what was presented in the State of the Forest. So it sounds like you're going to have a discussion at the Environmental Management Council. Do you still want a presentation made by Aaron? I can't remember his last name. What's Aaron's last name? Behringer, or Forest guy at a county meeting during services or operations, or what would you like, Ms. Terminelli?
It wasn't actually me. I think it was Mr. Smithers had asked a question after my EMC committee report at our last meeting, and had asked about where the county was with Emerald Ash Borer. And so that's where the invitation came to the task force, to John Tenbush and to Aaron, to present at our September meeting.
Okay, so we'll still do that then. We've got between Suzanne and others and Mr. Smithers, Ms. Fiacco, we can do that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
The information that Legislator Terminelli shared is loaded onto Google Drive under the either recent or under forestry.
Okay.
Okay, you did get it, because it keeps saying that it failed to send because my mailbox has two, I don't know. So you did get it.
Yeah.
I've sent it 5 times. Okay, I'm
It's
sorry.
there. Yeah, and I checked the links, they work.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So now we have old and new business. First thing up is a resolution for adopting proposed law B, number yet to be determined for the year 2020, amending local law D for the year 2018, which is setting policy on acquisition and sale of tax delinquent property in St. Lawrence County. Moved by Mr. Denisha, second by Mr. Lightfoot and Mr. Reagan. Okay.
Mr. Akers?
Yes.
Okay, I would have the county attorney clarify the purpose of this law for all legislators.
Thank you. Obviously, with the leave of the county treasurer. The local law that you have before you is actually the culmination of several movements and impacts from the executive orders and the administrative orders that have been issued over the course of the past few months. I think everyone will recall back several months ago, the governor issued Executive Order 202.28. It's one of approximately 60 executive orders that have been issued so far, but 202.28 specifically identified that no commercial or residential foreclosures could move forward at this time. It was later modified by 20248, 20 executive orders later, which stated no commercial or residential foreclosures could go forward unless the individual failed to demonstrate that their non-payment of a mortgage was the result of COVID-19 impact. Well, recently 202.57 and an administrative order issued by the court was issued, which essentially expanded upon that. 202.57 once again reiterated that the provisions of 202.28, 202.48 were extended until at least the end of September. But more importantly, it was interpreted by the court and included in the court's administrative order out of policy and procedure, which is essentially the administrative wing of the Office of Court Administration, that the administrative orders applied to tax foreclosures or interim proceedings, even though that has nothing to do necessarily with the non-payment of a mortgage due to COVID. The difficulty is no court has made a ruling on this per se. Court attorneys have said they interpret the executive orders as applying, but it isn't wound up in front of any court. Those court attorneys sent out directives to the county attorneys who are responsible for prosecuting the foreclosure actions and said, well, we don't have a decision yet. We do think that it is technically applicable, the executive orders, the administrative orders, to the interim proceedings separate from the mortgage proceedings. So we're going to tell you, we think it is in your best interest to abide by this. Well, our problem is we have a local law, and our local law specifically stated that the tax foreclosure auction was to be held in the second Saturday in September, and that our last date of redemption was to occur 30 days prior to that date. The new administrative order stretched out the first applicable time to have an auction as being October 15th, which would have run afoul of our local law. What you have in front of you is an amendment in the local law, specifically Section 7 of the local law that is in front of you, that permits A, for modification of the date pursuant to a validly issued administrative order, executive order, or statutory change within the state. And B, it also permits for the county treasurer, if she or he so chooses in the future, to have an online sale of the auction. That is the primary change that is included in this local law. What this will effectively do is permit for the auction to be pushed out past the October 15th date, which is currently the hold established by the administrative order and executive order 202.57. It will also permit for the treasurer to decide if it gets to a point in October or November that an in-person gathering is not feasible, that we may do it completely online.
Any questions for our county attorney? Mr. Forsythe.
Yeah, Steve, what about if you postponed it for a year? It's hard for me to hear. I get 1/3 of what you say. So if you talked about it, I'm sorry. But what if you put the tax sale off for a year?
The modification in the local law would theoretically permit for that at the discretion of the county treasurer. The danger in doing so is that if the county moves forward and forecloses upon these properties, obtaining judgment after the October 15th date, but long before the September 2021 date, those properties are technically in the possession of the county at that time. If they pose an attractive nuisance, if they pose a potential threat of liability to the county, at that point, the county has taken on that responsibility. So normally, there is an incentive of the county government to want to divest themselves of ownership of these specific properties in the fastest manner possible.
Renee, you would like to comment? We have a comment from our county treasurer.
Thank you. No, I would also add that you're also, for lack of a better term, I guess, bankrolling those properties again. Let's not lose sight of the fact that we make the municipalities whole on them. So It just pushes it further down the road, and that's a very large county cost. So that's all.
No, and I appreciate that. I just, I've heard different situations talking about it, and I just wonder how it would work.
Anyone else? If you look at the Auctions International website, they are having county sales. So they may be in conflict with Executive Order 202.57, but they're going ahead with it. I think they're waiting for a judge to rule, so we'll see. Okay, so any more discussion about this resolution? Seeing none. Oh.
Renee has her.
Renee, you want to say something?
Oh, just as a little additional information too, our office has been in contact with Auctions International for quite, and received a lot of positive feedback about only strictly online auctions. Of course, this is not their first year at it, but there's been a lot of success. And this year, I think if you look at the what's gone on with sales tax, and people buying their purchases online, I think a lot of people, if they're really interested in looking at that route, it's a good option. I'm very hesitant about it myself. I think it's really, we've had great auctions, our live auctions with people there, but if we, if we're pushed too far into it, I think that October, with that deadline, we're going to be looking at doing an online auction, and a lot of other counties across the state are doing so. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, and I think there's less chance for error because everybody has to bid in, so their actual number is bid in. And then if someone fails to come through with the money, it is the second bidder. So less chance of error, I think. But, so any more discussion? All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. All right.
Chair?
Yes.
Can I bring up one thing I forgot to mention?
Sure.
I was going to provide you with a transit update from our earlier discussion. With regard to public transit, many of you are familiar with the College Connector that's provided as an option for all 4 college campuses. When COVID-19 began, we immediately ceased providing the College Connector. I believe that was by the end of March. And with anticipation of the school year beginning, there was an interest by 3 of the colleges to proceed. That caused certainly great concern associated with the mobility of students coming back and where they may be also traveling to and from within the county. So in consideration, initially, the thought was not to begin the transit as far as the College Connector. St. Lawrence University opted not to participate at this time. So we were talking about both SUNY campuses as well as Clarkson. And in talking about how we might accomplish better controls, I'll remind you that we maintained the transit system for the entire duration of COVID-19 without any issues, significant modifications, both the restriction of not exchanging fares, modifications to the buses themselves, as well as protocol in place for folks boarding and exiting the buses. So in consideration of that, as well as not having any positive cases traced back, nor any contact tracing associated with the transit system, moving forward with the College Connector, with our partners at VTC and our mobility manager, we've had a great partnership with. We came to a lesser schedule, so it's modified by 6 hours. We also made requirements of negative results. So as many of you know, the students are required to be tested before they arrive on campus. So anyone using the transit system would already have to have negative results. And then we decided to evaluate this for each of 2 weeks throughout the month of August. So we met on August 14th by conference call, and there have yet been any attached cases or contact traces to the College Connector. We intend to evaluate again on August 28th, and then proceed, if all things remain equal, move back toward full service. Currently, as many of you know, we are running at about 70% on the transit system, and our intent would be to resume full service should all things again remain at the levels we're seeing now, September 1st or that weekend. So just wanted to give you that update. I know there were some questions about that. We've worked very closely with them. They have adhered to all of the requirements that we've made throughout the process. And I think that the colleges are looking forward with restrictions to be able to get their populations to stores and the places they need to go.
Good.
That's all.
Thank you. Anything else for old and new business? Mr. Burt?
In talking about, just to go back briefly to the report from DSS, I'm wondering, I'd like to have an opportunity to ask questions and to talk, maybe in addition to Dave and his new colleague. I'd like to have an opportunity to talk with Heather Rand. It's been we've been without a commissioner now for, I don't know, probably close to a month or somewhere around there. And I don't know that it's fair to expect a whole lot of answers from Cindy, who's brand new in her job. I'd like an opportunity to get like an update and to be able to ask questions, you know, of the people who've been had their finger on the pulse. I think it's better than a report, but I don't know. Could we have that, Ruth?
I certainly can talk with the department. I don't see why not.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lightfoot?
You know, it's always nice if you're asking questions to have something to refer to. While I appreciate John's, attitude towards how he wants to look at it, my thought is that please do the analysis. Please bring it back to us, and then we can bring in anybody we want and talk to them about what is in it, what's been requested, what's been provided, what needs to be provided, what needs to be whatever. And as I said, I don't even know what is in or what is supposed to be in the report that is 2 months late. So while I don't agree, or excuse me, I don't disagree that it would be nice to have a face-to-face with somebody from social services. I'd like to see that done after we get a report, after we have something to refer to, after we can make some informed questions.
The 90-day report, Ruth, is because of a new hire? Or what's the 90-day, what's the purpose of the 90-day?
I think an update to what the board was previously provided. I think that was the intent. I think there weren't parameters the first time except to understand the current status there. I think that was at least my understanding of what was to be provided, so.
Anyone else? Mr. Denisha? Okay.
Different new business.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time hearing you. I think you're gonna have to pull your mic closer.
Different new business.
Okay, all right.
This is in regards to our St. Lawrence County Risk Manager, which we do not have any longer. The board determined there was a need to have a St. Lawrence County Risk Manager. We were fortunate when we hired Paul Baxter. Unfortunately for us, he moved on. He had an opportunity to move on. We had an interim replacement for a very short period of time. He decided that he needed to move on as well. We still have a need. And I will point to specifically to the question that I asked earlier, and Mr. Perkins asked earlier, about the safety issue with the trailer. We don't have anybody. We do not have anybody in that position. We can ask questions of someone to keep their finger on the pulse of the safety of the county. And, we felt we needed something there before. Sure, everyone still feels someone there. Yeah, I would like to see us do something, get someone back in there, not just a warm body for a seat, but somebody that's capable of doing the job.
Here to respond this time, Ms. Doyle.
There are a couple things in talking with the department also that we're looking at as far as the position is concerned. Certainly, I think that's very important. I think the short-term fill that we had also took care of a lot of the things that were ongoing at the time. But certainly, the board believes that's important and we'll fill that position. We may look at adding some duties to that and potentially bringing you a consideration for where that position sits in the structure.
Mr. Button, do you have anything to add as far as the role of workers' comp or anything like that?
No, I think the county administrator nailed on it. We have been analyzing the position structurally in terms of its assignments and seeing where the county could benefit from potentially dovetailing some of the responsibilities that are assigned in other positions with that specific title. So it is definitely at the forefront of our discussions. It has been something that I think we've discussed at least 2 or 3 times in the past week. So I can tell you we have been very focused on what's happening here. We just have not been able to reach a conclusion yet so that we can understand where we're headed. And I don't mind having some offline discussions with you also, Larry, about what the county administrator and I are looking at.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Denisha. Anyone else?
Yes.
Okay, go, Mr. Arquette.
Thanks, Kevin. I think in regards to Mr. Burke's request and understanding what Joe's concern was to get the report first, I just want to express a sense of urgency in bringing Mr. Burke's request forward. I think that in recent, in our recent past, we've had some detriment there, and we really need to address some of those issues. So I believe there's a sense of urgency in Mr. Burke's request.
Anyone else? I would agree. It's 2 months late. Let's get the report first. We have a need for executive session, and is it all for all 4 categories?
We have negotiations, litigation, and appointment.
So,
All 4.
all 4? Entertain a motion to go into executive session. Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Denisha and Mr. Fay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. So you get a break for a few minutes there, Dylan?